If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Oh, PlastChicks.
PlastChicks is an SPE sponsored podcast. Hi,
Yes,
Sparkle Queen.
Well, hello. Yeah, I just got off presenting the global material and finish forecast. So I had to really think about my wardrobe in advance. So went for that reflective, sparkly look.
So if anyone is just going audio right now, Mercedes is in probably the piece of clothing I admire the most out of her wardrobe, and it is a sparkly bomber jacket with a zipper, and I will steal it one day and wear it every day to mock her. Out of jealousy. So it's beautiful. I love it.
Jealousy mock. I mean, that's like basic, and jealousy admiration mock, I think is sums up our relationship pretty well.
It's what we do best.
Yeah. So I am Mercedes Landazuri.
And I'm Lynzie Nebel.
And with our powers combined, we are
PlastChicks,
the voices of resin.
And we are here not by ourselves. Not that we ever are by ourselves, but we are here with an awesome guest today.
Yes, we are. Her name is Sarah Weber, and she is Sustainable Packaging Engineer at Plastic Ingenuity. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Well, so as we mentioned a little bit earlier, we have a mutual friend in common, which, I mean, I guess the plastics industry, it's kind of like we all have mutual friends in common, but you are good pals with our favorite Irishman, Connor Carlin. Sorry to all the other Irishmen out there.
All of our family members, Lynzie, be careful there.
It's fine. And so, he messaged me and he said, you have to talk to Sarah. I think it's going to be a really great podcast. I said, I don't trust you. You're a very grumpy old man. And he said, no, I promise you this will be a good episode. So we're putting all the pressure on Connor. So nobody else has to worry. This is a Connor sponsored episode.
I don't trust him at all. I don't have his book right in front of me right now either.
Yes.
So.
Very untrustworthy source. He's only used resources for everything. And president-elect of SPE right now. So we're very excited to have you on here due to personal recommendations, despite what we just said.
We were out to lunch and I had mentioned your podcast just as a one-off thing. Didn't know that he had a connection with you two. And he's like, I know the host. I can get you on there. I was fangirling.
Oh,
and I didn't realize I actually pan out to be a guest on your podcast. But here we are.
Oh, that's so now technically, he owes us a favor. Okay. Yeah. That's all I need to know.
It's so cool, as we've been doing this podcast for a few years now, it's been so, I mean, because we definitely fangirl over pretty much everybody we have on this show. And 100%. It's really cool to now have people starting to, to reciprocate that, I would say. We're definitely here for it.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are so cool that you were brought up as a potential guest.
Right. Oh, that's not a hard lead-in question at all. Tell us why you're so cool.
Well, I try to be as cool as I can, but most people just call me a packaging nerd. But in this industry, we're all the same, right? So I am a sustainable packaging engineer at Plastic Ingenuity. Plastic Ingenuity is a custom thermoformer. We're headquartered just outside of Madison, Wisconsin. And my role is very unique in the sense that I'm the first person to do it. Our sustainability department is very new. It started in 2021. My boss, Zach Moscato, is the corporate sustainability manager. He started this department, realizes that we need a person devoted to packaging sustainability at our company. He plucked me right out of college. So here I am. I got my degree in packaging engineering at UW Stout, just a couple hours north in Wisconsin. And so that's kind of my journey of getting here. My background in packaging spans back to my high school days, which is kind of interesting in the sense that most people fall into packaging later on in their career. and they start with something else, whether it be in mechanical engineering, graphic design, and they just make their way into packaging. But this was a degree that I really wanted to pursue when I was a sophomore or junior in high school, which is really interesting.
Wow. So how did you get into it? You know, that early? I wasn't thinking about packaging at all,
And
or manufacturing in those years. How did
I
you?
love that, because I feel like in general, you have people that go into plastics engineering, and you usually fall into that from like
Right.
mechanical engineering or something else. So I was one of the weird nerds that went straight to plastics. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate someone that, got in that lane right away.
Yeah, my story is really interesting in the sense that I loved every single math and science class that I possibly could in high school. And I wanted to go into engineering, but I didn't want to do something that was boring. So I didn't want to do mechanical engineering. To me, that was boring. Manufacturing, civil, that was just not it. And I had this really artistic side of myself as well. I took a lot of painting classics. I love ceramics. I wanted to merge those two together, and I wasn't really finding a career path that I was able to do both of those things until I found packaging. It was a really weird one-off applied engineering class where we made a Kleenex box with a laser engraver. We cut out a Kleenex box, and I said, wow, that was really cool. I really liked that project a lot, but whatever, I guess I'll just move on to doing more, SolidWorks designs. That was kind of it. And I didn't realize that there was actually a career behind it. My teacher stopped me and he said, hey, Sarah, like, hold on. You were really good at that. You seem to really enjoy it. Did you know that there is a career in this, that you could pursue this? I said, no. He was an alum of UW Stout. He went for technology education. He knew of the packaging program there. And the rest was history. We set up a tour to go see the packaging lab. I met with the program directors. I spent the whole day on campus. I fell in love with the industry right then and there. And I declared my major a few months later. I only applied to UW Stout because that was the only thing I wanted to do was packaging.
Wow.
And here I am, 6 years later, actually doing what I set out to do. I'm a real engineer now. I'm an adult, so yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it. But yeah,
are we the same person? Because I feel like that's very. I mean, I don't have the artistic side. That's not me. I'm all.
That's yes. Lynzie and I are the same person. So that
together we combine to be the same. We are combined to be you. But that's the same thing I did, and I think that highlights a really important piece that the industry is missing. Is a lot of people don't know that these are opportunities and these are career choices you can make, because I had like a class and we did cool like plastic stuff in high school, and I had no idea you could be a plastics engineer until it was pointed out to me. And it was like, oh, well, I would have skipped right over that.
Right. And I didn't know it existed at all until it was right in front of my face. So every chance that I could get when I was going through my degree at UW Stout, I would put it in front of other people's faces, So I was a tour guide for the university for 4 years. And I would plug the packaging program as much as I possibly could.
Wow. So you were a tour guide like even in your freshman year?
Yeah, I started the spring semester of my freshman year as a tour guide, and I did it for 4 years until I graduated. Yeah, it was the best job ever. I loved it so much. It was just really fun to be in front of, high school students that are so eager to get to college. They're so excited. They're going to tackle the world. And it was just so fun to like harvest that energy. And then be able to kind of help them create this decision-making process of what major they wanted to go into. It was just very exciting at all times. It was a happy environment to be in. And then, yeah, whenever I could, if I thought someone would be a really good fit for packaging or plastics engineering, which was another program that was kind of overlooked at UW Stout as well, I would try to, push people towards that to at least check it out. And the coolest experience is that, a girl who I gave a tour to like over 3 years ago is now a junior in the packaging program at UW Stout starting this fall. And
I love that.
She's a mentee of mine, and she's starting her first internship. And yeah, it's just a very exciting and fulfilling experience that I had there. And, someone did that with me. And so I'm just trying to give back as much as I can. I try to be that, proud alum. So
that's amazing. And you're such a recent graduate too. It's amazing to hear you talk about having mentees. This is wonderful. This is what it's all about. So do you, I want to know, do you still have that first project, that Kleenex box design?
I do have it.
Yes.
We love a
Can
good
you
memento.
I'm a very like sentimental person, and I like to keep my little knickknacks. So in that moment, I did keep the Kleenex box. It was a little house that had a chimney where you could pull the Kleenex out of it. So it was kind of like a graphic design thing and an engineering thing. And anyways, I kept it for old time's sake, just because that's what sparked my interest in this
Listen,
industry. So
I have a green ABS purge that looked like an angel one time, and I was like, I'm keeping this. And one time we were moving, my husband's like, the hell is this? I'm like, it is my purge angel. You do not touch that. That stays with us forever. It's in the basement somewhere, but still, it stays with us forever.
It needs to stay. Yeah, it's a keeper.
Yeah. Oh
So-
my gosh.
So let's talk about packaging more. Why should packaging be taken seriously, and why should there specifically be these packaging undergraduate programs rather than an afterthought?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And obviously, since I love this industry so much, I'm going to say it's mandatory that we have packaging engineers that are technically trained, just for job security's sake. But really, in the sense of it, it's such a complex industry, and it takes very highly technically trained individuals to do this job well. And I was very grateful in the sense that I have a degree specifically devoted to packaging. Not to say that people who fall into it later, there's people that are mechanical engineers, that are graphic designers, that come into being a packaging engineer, but there's something to be said about the industry as a whole, that we need people devoted to packaging. So in my mind, it helps us to be more sustainable, right? Because that's kind of the world that I live in right now in this role. So I'm thinking about sustainability all the time. If we don't have technically trained individuals in packaging, then there's a really high chance of things being over-engineered. There's a high chance of failure with your products. There's damages that'll happen. So really, when the rubber meets the road, we really need packaging engineers to make the world go round, because if there weren't any of us, none of these products would arrive safely to consumers, to hospitals, all around the world. So I like to say that we make the world go round, but maybe I'm a little biased.
Well, and I like that, you got your training at a school that's also offering plastics engineering, with one of our favorite plastics
Adam.
professors, Adam.
I love him.
And, and I think that's one of those things that, there's a point where you should be talking about the packaging earlier than I think most people consider packaging. I think most people are like, box and slap some stuff in it and everybody's happy. I mean, I feel like that's probably the Amazon approach, but I don't want to anger our Amazon overlords, because I do order a lot of stuff from Amazon.
Yeah, definitely got to tread lightly there.
So, is there a point in the design process where you should really be talking to a packaging engineer as opposed to at the end?
Yeah, so in my short career, I had internships and co-ops and all that stuff leading up until this full-time job. But what I've found is most packaging engineers or packaging departments as a whole get pulled into projects at the 11th hour. And then
100%.
we have to save the day, and we have to pull all these things together very last minute. And what I found is most of the time we're versatile enough in our industry that we can make it happen, which is a really strong suit that a lot of packaging engineers have. But I think in the ideal situation, packaging engineers should be included from day one of the concepts. That would, in a perfect world, if I could wave my magic wand and that's how it would be, yeah, I'd want to be in those conversations and sitting at that table from the beginning. But in reality, the best place for me, and what I've found works the best, is when we're brought in when the design is frozen but not ready to launch. So we can design our package when the product is frozen. There's no more changes that are going to occur. We can design it as precise as we need it to be. We don't have to over-engineer anything. We have adequate amount of time to design that, optimized package. So that's not always the case, but in a perfect world, it would be at a design freeze, technically, where we would be included in the conversation.
And do you think the desire for most companies and most people to want to have sustainable packaging, do you think that adds another element of time that people need to concern themselves with? Or, are you guys kind of learning how to adjust the sustainability into it from the get-go?
Yeah, that's basically what my job entails, is taking products that, well, right now, I mean, I've only been at Plastic Ingenuity for 8 months, so I'm basically taking products that are already launched and trying to change them in a way to make them more sustainable. But we would try to be involved in those conversations from the beginning. So say a company has a corporate sustainability goal that they want to reduce their carbon emissions by 30% by 2025 or 2030 or whatever. Packaging is a great way to start on that journey, especially when you can add recycled materials to your products, that you can down gauge your products. That would reduce your carbon emissions by alongside. So, that's the type of thing that I think packaging engineers need to be in the conversation earlier from a sustainability perspective, because once a design is made for a package, it's a lot harder to then add sustainable components to it later when it's already made. So new product development process with sustainability is the best way to go, not necessarily a sustaining environment.
So how do you deal with some of the misconceptions around both maybe from some of the companies you work with, and certainly from a lot of consumers that they're getting input and directives from in some way or another? How do you deal with some of the misconceptions out there about not just about plastics, but deciding what is the right material? How do you guide brands and designers to the most sustainable choice?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What I like to tell a lot of people is that I'm pro plastic, but I'm anti-plastic waste. So I am a huge proponent of plastic. Obviously, Plastic Ingenuity, all we do is plastic thermoform. So I am a proponent of this and I believe in it. I would say to people that are consumers is to believe in recycling. First and foremost, recycling works when it is done in practice. And the more that we recycle, the more volumes that we'll have to recirculate these back into our packaging products and truly drive a circular economy. So for consumers, it's really buying into recycling and educating them to, put that thermoform in their curbside recycling bin. For companies, I would say that sustainability is more than meets the eye, right? So it's not just about, adding recycled content. It could be down gauging, it could be changing your materials. And with plastics especially, your carbon emissions are going to be a lot lower if you use plastics versus, a glass or aluminum or whatever. You really have to weigh all of your options there. But the packaging engineer, the true packaging engineer in me, is if I find that a plastic application isn't the best option for our customer, and say a paper-based option is better for them and it's more sustainable, like I have to stay true to myself in that regard and say, yeah, that is the better option for you. And I know this is a business world and that's really hard for me. I'm not a salesperson. I'm really glad that I'm working in the sustainability realm, because I would straight up tell them this paper-based option is better for you and you should go that route over this plastic option. It has lower carbon emissions. It has, your lightweighting, so on and so forth. So it's a hard battle that I play. Because I always want to be a proponent of plastic, but if there's an option that's better, I'm going to tell people that.
Well, and I think you need that level of transparency, because I think with the recycling alone, people aren't believing it because they feel like they've been lied to for so long. So to start hearing, there's times where there are other better choices than plastics. I mean, yes, we're talking to the company, so it's a little bit different, but I think there's, I think that helps earn some trust back in the fact that, obviously, I hate to break it to you, plastic is going to be one of your better options most of the time. But here you go. Here's this situation where it's not.
Right. And I try to be data driven as much as I can.
Always helpful.
In the sense of like a life cycle assessment. where you can truly look at the carbon emissions of one product that's plastic or one that is a paper-based. If there's an option where you have lower carbon emissions and you're using a plastic product, I am going to recommend that to you. Because if your goals are aligned with reducing your carbon emissions and the plastic option gives you that, then that just is data driven. It makes sense in my mind, and that's what I try to relay to a lot of the companies that I discuss this with.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, coming from, you know, I've had you know, some quite a background in sales as well, and I have to say that I really feel is the strongest approach. When people are newer in sales, they try to get every yes they can and try to convince a customer why this solution is specifically the best. But it's much better to take that truly transparent and consultative approach where you're saying, hey, you know, customer, this option is one option for you, but this one might be better. We don't provide that solution, but I want you to know about this as well. And they'll come back to you and work with you on another project because they trust you, you know?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we were kind of talking about ahead of time was the fact that the packaging industry, and specifically like sustainable packaging industry, is starting to become kind of a trendy industry.
So cool right now. It's so hot. Right?
It's almost as good as Mercedes jacket. What do you think it is about, you know, packaging and specifically sustainability in packaging that's starting to attract a lot more women and young engineers?
Yeah, I mean, I can really only speak for myself, but I am a 23-year-old packaging engineer that's looking at sustainability. So obviously it worked for me. The trend is on par in my book. In this sense, it feels like I have a fulfilling role, not only at my organization, but in the industry as a whole. And then just as a person living in this world, you know, like I am actually doing stuff that is beneficial to my organization. I'm providing benefits to my customers through sustainability. And then I'm also in part doing something that makes me feel good, leaving work at the end of the day and seeing my products on the shelf and seeing that they can be recycled, you know? So in that regard, it's fulfilling for me to be involved in this industry. I think from the woman perspective, we want to be involved in these spaces. We want to be subject matter experts, and a sustainability route is the way to do that. It's becoming more and more popular for brands to jump on board with sustainability. And when it comes to talking about life cycle assessments, carbon reductions, recycling, things like that, young engineers can be the subject matter experts in the room over people that have been in the industry for 40 years. And that's a really cool thing to provide a diverse perspective in the industry. And it's really refreshing to see. So I'd say that's probably what the trend is mostly. Like, we're allowed to be subject matter experts because we just learned this in school. We have a 4-year degree, and this is ingrained in our curriculum for 4 years straight. And I would say in that regard, we can be SMEs in this space.
And I never thought about that. And I know a lot of times, you know, the reports coming out from them, I don't know who them are, you know, say that a lot of younger professionals and Gen Z, the most important thing in a career choice for them is something that matters and something that can make an impact on. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to see that when you're behind a desk doing SolidWorks all day, or, you know, yeah, that could be your passion, but do you see that impact right away? Not necessarily, or you're bottom of the totem pole, but like to be someone working on sustainability and, you know, like you said, having that fresh perspective on it, that's you're coming in hot with some new takes.
Thank you.
So we don't talk a lot of thermoforming on this podcast, and no disrespect, you know, we personally have had a lot more experience with injection molding.
And injection molding is the best molding, but I will allow time for other processes.
But I mean, even personally, I mean, I've been exposed to, I have, you know, some good exposure on pretty much all forms of I mean, but I would say thermoforming probably even less than compression molding, which is kind of weird. But can you tell us how thermoforming is a great candidate for creating circularity in parts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, you know, No offense taken on the thermoforming front. It's a very niche market. Obviously, I live in this world every single day, so I'm like, oh yeah, that's thermoform, that's thermoform, that's thermoformed when I'm walking in a grocery store. But the process of thermoforming is a great candidate for circularity in the sense that we can, pump out new tools, production ready tools for sustainable products very quickly. Our tooling is lower cost than other options, in the sense that, if you want a really thin gauge material that you just punch out a bunch of clamshells and you want a really big tool that runs fast, thermoforming is a great candidate for that. And we also do inline extrusion, especially, at Plastic Ingenuity, we do a lot of inline extrusion. So that makes our process more sustainable in the sense that, we're extruding material into a sheet in line with our thermoformer, we're trimming it, and you have a product at the end of your line all in one. It makes it for a very seamless and sustainable process. We also can embed a lot of, recycle ready materials. We can do, post-consumer recycled pellet. We can do flake. We can do all that type of stuff within our thermoforming process. So we have a lot of material options that are sustainable as well.
Mm-hmm. Something that came up recently, one of these meetings that I was at, some of the MRFs here in the United States seems like they're pushing back a little bit against thermoforms. Yeah, it seems like you're nodding. Good. I'm glad.
They are also on the disrespect train.
But I mean, actually, the most recent one that we had on, Kate, I know that her facility accepts thermoforms, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting environment. I've toured a few MRFs in my short tenure at Plastic Ingenuity, and it's an eye-opening experience. And whoever's listening, if you ever have the opportunity to visit a MRF, it's a wonderful experience. It really opens your eyes to what happens to your package at a recycling facility. What you think is happening, I can assure you, is not what's happening at those places. They're highly automated. There's a lot going on, so much sorting. When it comes to thermoforms, though, especially PET thermoforms, they want to separate thermoforms away from PET bottles. So they want PET bottle bales to not have a high percentage of thermoforms because that would lower the IV of the bale that is being purchased, that goes to a reclaimer, and then in part would have a lower IV when you purchase that flake or pellet back into your system. And the bottle manufacturers don't necessarily want a lower IV when they add recycled content back into their bottles. So it's a sticky wicket. Obviously, working at Plastic Ingenuity, I want more thermoforms. We want more thermoforms to be recovered. That's why we're involved in the Recycling Partnerships PET Material Coalition that is doing the best that they can to educate thermoforms being recycled and figuring out ways to, make thermoform only bales. And we will buy them back. Plastic Ingenuity, we want those thermoform only bales. But infrastructure needs to change at the MRF level and the reclaimer level as well to get to that point where we have enough thermoforms to make a whole bale, right? So yeah, it's a very complicated environment. And I totally understand those bottle manufacturers don't want a low IV on the flake that they buy back. I totally get it. But as a plastic manufacturer who makes thermoforms, we want them to be recovered in high volume. So I don't know. Right. We're working on it. We'll get there. But yeah.
And I love the fact that you say, we want them, we want to buy it back, because part of the struggle, as I understand it, for MRFs is just having those markets, having those avenues where they can, sell the material back into.
Yeah, and that's the thing with recycling is I get this question asked a lot: is this product recyclable? And there's a lot of components that go into that. It has to be in the right material. It has to be in the right shape. It has to be able to not have labels all over it so it can get scanned and sorted properly. But there also needs to be an end value market for that material as well, right? So you can't have a bunch of PETG materials coming through, and technically, yeah, that can be recycled, but is it in practice? Is the infrastructure set up for that? No. So you have to there's a lot of caveats with recycling too. If there's not an end market, no, your package is not recyclable. In my mind, it's not. Technically, can it be chopped up and sorted? Sure. But no one's buying it. right? So that's
right.
the thing.
I feel like it's very chicken and the egg, you know, there's only so much you want to make out of a certain, you know, recycled material, because you don't know how you can feed that back around. You don't know when you're going to get that material again. I know one of my last companies, we did a nylon PET, and it was just so hard to get stock in on it. And, you know, if you can't get stock in, how are you making this product that's supposed to go out every month? You can't, you struggle. So yeah, that's a very tricky component there.
Mhm.
So what's one of the wildest packaging requests you've ever encountered?
This is
I
an
feel like you have a
interesting-
really good story.
Well, here's the thing. I have to be very careful.
Yeah.
What I say. I have stories, even in my short, you know, in 2 years basically in the industry since I started my internships. But the craziest moments are when, you know, a product manager or a customer or someone asks a packaging engineer, hey, can you do this outrageous thing and can you do it by next week? You know, those are the types of questions that like we get asked. I'm trying to think of a few options, like, can this product be, you know, compostable and recyclable? Because we really want it to be both, because we have goals for both. No, you know, so like,
Pick a lane.
and what happens is these wild requests, I always have to like bring people down to earth and say, this is the realistic path that we can do for you, in the best way possible. Yeah, so there's some outrageous stories in there, but mostly it involves people asking a packaging group to do something very last minute, and that's basically impossible. So those are like the main moments where I get.
I believe that. I feel like people are always going to push timing no matter what end of the project they're on. So
Yeah, and then it's always like, oh, can this be cost neutral as well?
Oh
Like,
yeah. I want it premium, but cost neutral.
right, right.
it's fine. Everything's fine. No issues. So you mentioned you're working on some pretty cool stuff right now. Can you tell us some of the projects you're working on? I know there's some certifications you guys are getting or doing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's been the main brunt of my workload since I started in January. You know, I have a few customer projects here and there, but it takes time, as you all know, when you're starting at a new company, it takes some time to really like get knee deep into some projects. But when I started at PI, we were embarking on an ISCC Plus certification, which we received earlier in the year. And that allows us to bring in advanced recycled materials through our system, which is really cool. And so we've spent a lot of time.
Sorry, so I know ISCC is Inter-Society Color Council, but I'm pretty sure that's not the ISCC you're referring to.
Yeah, it's the International Sustainability Carbon Certification. I think I have that right. You might have to put it in your notes of this
Got it.
of this podcast episode, but essentially ISCC is a carbon certification that allows you to have segregated bookkeeping through a mass balance calculation of bringing advanced recycled materials in your system and then having them, you know, book kept throughout. And then when you bring them to your customer, they can make a verifiable claim of the advanced recycled content that is in that product. So
that's amazing because
yeah.
I mean, I think we all know there's just blatant greenwashing.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And that's the main reason why a lot of people are jumping on board with ISCC Plus is because it avoids that greenwashing altogether. It gives you a verifiable claim that this much percent recycled content is in this package and you're supporting the circular economy, and this is verified throughout the system of when it starts at your resin manufacturer all the way through when it gets to the end of the line. So it really avoids that greenwashing and allows us to bring in advanced recycled materials and provide a sustainable solution to our customers that don't have the ability to put a recyclable structure out there. For example, our healthcare customers are very interested and advanced recycled materials that they can put into, say, their, sterile barrier systems or PETG trays that need to be sterilized. So that's a really big thing for our healthcare business. So yeah, ISCC was first. On Monday, we received our ISO 14001 certification, which is our environmental management system. So we received that certification on Monday. It was a big celebration here. So we're very happy to share that as well.
And what does, and I know you guys, you're talking about the certifications, but you also have been doing a lot with your bio-based polymers. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of the projects you're doing with that?
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of requests from our customers with bio-based PET options. So we've been trialing a lot of those options for our customers and seeing, what trade-offs they can have with, doing maybe 50% bio-based and then 50% recycled content. What does that get them from an LCA perspective to align with their goals? So basically it's a lot of trialing right now, but we do see that as a trend in our industry to have, to move away from fossil fuels, is to try to get into a bio-based option for some of our customers that are more on the cutting edge of the industry. So that was really exciting too. That's something that I only got embarked on, a tiny bit while I was in school. And so it's really cool to see that coming to full force in the industry right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very exciting time.
Yeah. So, well, that's, it's great to hear that there's so much going on in the, the packaging world that is working towards sustainability. Because I think, as much as like the plastic product industry gets some of the flack, I think, the packaging industry is really sitting out there at the front of it, getting more of it. And so, making those conscious choices and, providing customers who don't know what they can do, with an avenue to start moving in that direction, I think is a really, big win for both our industries.
Right.
And, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
I know. Yeah. And I think packaging gets a bad rap regarding like plastic use and sustainability and all that stuff, but it's really just because it's the first thing that meets the consumer's eye, and that's okay. That's the industry that we're in. That's the industry that we chose, and we're here. But we can't simply sit, behind our desks and not do anything for sustainability. It's all in our power to make a change, and that's why I feel really empowered to be at a company like Plastic Ingenuity, where I can do this work every single day and help our customers reach their sustainability goals. We have people that have, targets for 2025 and 2030, and we have customers that don't even know how to define sustainability, and we're everywhere in between, and that's okay. Everyone's starting this journey, and I'm just really happy to be in this space to make solutions for people.
And where are people maybe going to run into you next, or your colleagues at Plastic Ingenuity? Are you going to be at Pack Expo?
I will be at Pack Expo. We will have
it like Disneyland for you? Is it like Disneyland for you going to Pack Expo? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm such a nerd. I love Pack Expo. I love these trade shows. I'm just a kid in a candy store at these things. But yeah, we will be there. I will be there attending some sessions as well as hanging out at the booth. And then our team will also be at the SBC conference in a few weeks too. So we will be there as well.
Sustainable Packaging Coalition?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, I think we're just about out of time, but it's been awesome having you be our guest. I guess we will give Connor some credit here. Or no, we still need him to owe us a favor, so we won't give him credit yet.
We'll do that first, and then we'll give him credit. Yeah,
then we'll go into it. But we appreciate you being on here, and we really love to see this type of position being created in the industry, and the stuff you guys are doing to make packaging more sustainable.
Yeah, me too. Happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.